Let's join Michael Chua and find out what it's really like behind the scenes and behind the camera. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. You know, when we were speaking before, you were telling me about how you had transitioned from a career in IT into acting and producing, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, a lot of people pivot, but this is just crazy.
It started when I was a student in the Polytechnic. I was a member of the Polytechnic Welfare Services Club. So what we do is that every year we do a sobbing stage story to get the freshmen to join us as volunteers in the welfare homes. Then in the welfare homes, we also acted, sang, and danced to entertain the residents of the homes. So we are talking about old folks, children, and children with special needs. Then in turn, we also train some of the old folks and children to perform as well, because we want their involvement and all that. And particularly those children with special needs, they are quite good at rhythm, surprisingly. So it was good fun at that time. But growing up in Singapore during that time when everybody was poor, the thought of going into the entertainment circuit and becoming an actor, I dare not even think about that. I mean, it's not negotiable. So I went for a career in engineering. So I studied civil engineering. And then before I graduated, I started programming for the geometric design of roads and so on, really technical stuff. Then I started having this interest, the joy of crafts or programming. I went into programming and then specializing in security. And at that time, it was a very good opportunity to travel and work. So I did that. So to date, I've lived in 19 countries, 4 continents.
Wow.
So it was only some 11 years ago that out of the blue, I got a message online asking me whether I'd like to act in her film. And out of curiosity, I said yes. And when I attended the audition and rehearsal, she was very generous with her compliments. And she said that I was good, you should take that seriously and become a professional actor and all that. At that time, I believed her because I didn't know anything better. Right? If she had said that my acting sucks, I would have believed her totally. So there lies the importance of an honest positive. Imagine this honest positive have taken me the last 11 years, 400 productions, 2 acting awards, and 2 films went viral, and 1 lead acting role in a full-fledged 90-minute movie.
Wow.
So I think it's very important to encourage people. I mean, honest positive. Just if somebody is good in something, tell him or her that he or she is good in something. So that's how I got started. So the 5th film that I acted in called Hentak Kaki won the Best Actor and Best Film.
Congrats.
Then when it was released a year after, it went viral to about 1 million hits. So at that time, I was thinking also maybe it's beginner's luck. I thought it's beginner's luck. It just happened. So 2 years later, another film won the Best Film and Best Actor. And then yet another short film went viral. This time really, really viral, like 30 million hits.
Oh my gosh.
So Singapore has only 5 million people, which means that I started being recognized outside of Singapore. So for instance, if I'm in the tourist areas in town, I'll get a tap on the shoulder and turn back, and this little Japanese girl will ask, like, are you an actor? And when I said yes, she got excited and wanted a photograph and all that. I got stopped in the train by a class of Indonesian students together with their teacher, and they wanted a photograph and a chat with me and all that. I also get fan mails now, even now, like a few a week or something like that. Some rather touching and encouraging. For instance, I get one that asked me not to ever give up acting because I'm making so much positive impact in people.
Very nice.
And there was yet another one who said that he was in a rut in his life. He was very troubled in his life, like standstill. Then after watching my film, he could move on in life. Wow, I didn't plan that, you know.
Yeah, that's really incredible.
All this has attracted the attention of a former international movie star who is based in Singapore. And she cast me as a lead actor in a full-fledged feature film, which won some minor awards in Bali and places. So I had the experience of walking on red carpets in international film festivals, waving to reporters and fans and all that.
Oh.
That was quite an interesting experience. Yeah, being treated like VVIPs in Vietnam and the surrounding countries in Singapore. Yeah, so after all this, I was thinking, why is that happening to me? I didn't really plan it exactly like that.
Right.
And maybe it is a calling to tell stories through films. So I started my own film production. I wrote several scripts, some didn't work out. So the first one I did was a 5-minute drama called The Next Plot. The Next Plot is the story about a grieving old man struggling against religious stigma to be buried next to his late wife because his late wife converted into another religion.
你平时什么都迟到，为什么这次你偏偏走得那么早？
After that one, I was thinking, yeah, dramas may be easier to shoot. I wanted something more difficult, a challenge. So I decided to write and shoot an action movie called Bloodline Blues, which is about the story of a young heir to an English noble family escaping from his duties and obligations to family to come to Singapore to reconcile with his lover. Okay, so that was a 23-minute action film. And now since streaming is more popular, like you have YouTube channels that are quite serious now, like the high end will be Netflix and HBOs and all that. So I decided to write a drama series, a comedy series that will eventually be up in YouTube early next year. So we are nearing the end of shooting a 12 times 5-minute episode to be put on YouTube. It's a comedy drama series called Soul Connection. It is about an immigration officer relationship with the father. And it seems that they are getting along well now because they are talking every day now, and except that the father appears in odd situations and surprising moments, giving unsolicited advice. The purpose of this series is to bring back the art of meaningful conversation, because I find that despite and maybe because of the availability of technologies and the means of communications, our quality of content of speech has gone down quite a lot.
Absolutely.
Like many times people talk fluff, and so I hope that will achieve some of that through comedy and drama. So this in a nutshell how I got to today.
Don't tell me I got COVID. Huh? I got COVID!
It was sort of the biggest challenge when you transitioned from a career in technology into a career in entertainment.
Is to learn nuances. Besides English, I speak Mandarin, Hokkien, Cantonese, Teochew, and some Malay. Now, some of the languages I realized I was not really natural in, especially Mandarin. Some people may think that Mandarin is the mother tongue of all Chinese people. Not true, okay? Because in China, there are many languages, so everybody has their own regional language, which is basically their mother tongue. So my mother tongue is not Mandarin. One of the main challenge is to bring languages that I'm fluent in to being natural in. There's a difference between fluent and natural. In daily life, fluent is good enough. If I'm going to present artificial intelligence for chatbots, as long as the logical content is there, is fine, right? The nuances, less important. However, in acting, you have to be smooth in your articulation, your diction, your voice, your tone, the whole works. And also the X factor of being natural in the language. One simple way of explaining what is a natural language to a person is that you go behind him and go boo. and he jumps up, turns around, and then scolds you in that language. That's his natural language. Or if he wakes up from his sleep and still half asleep and started to talk to you in a language that he doesn't normally talk, that could be one of his natural languages as well. So in order to get Mandarin more natural to my daily life, I bought an expensive headset and I listen to Mandarin radio every moment I can. That helped a lot. My Mandarin has gotten better. And also, I spoke to a friend of mine whose mother was a lifetime Mandarin teacher, and he suggested that I should start thinking in Mandarin. So I have attempted to start thinking in Mandarin, consciously at first, but later it becomes more of a habit. So for instance, the other day I was in Channel 5, which is English language drama, and everybody was speaking English. There's one scene where I was holding my mobile phone. The director told me in English, said, Michael, you got to be careful with your mobile phone. Don't press anything wrong because it just displays wrong things and the camera can see. Then I replied in Mandarin. I was surprised I replied in Mandarin. Yeah. So that is their minor successes coming in through enforced routine.
我还要继续练习。这个女生，
I even listen to Mandarin pop songs and play them when I sleep. So I'm stretching it to the max. The other thing about nuances is that it's quite strange in that real life nuances has to be translated into camera.
Right.
Now, real life is multi-dimensional. The camera is two-dimensional. At best, maybe nowadays, three-dimensional camera. So to squeeze a multi-dimensional thing into a three-dimensional or two-dimensional camera requires some tricks. So what appears to be natural in real life may not look natural on camera. So this relationship with the camera is very important. And because I got into acting and somehow got quite successful in it, getting a lot of gigs, at my peak I was getting about 60 gigs a year. So at any one time, there are 3 or 4 sets of scripts in my bag. And in the case of Singapore, it's not only different story, director, and genres, it will be different languages as well. Now then the question is how to consistently perform in all these languages when I'm tired. Because at 60 gigs a year, you're talking about more than 1 a week. So a gig can be 3 days, can be 28 days. So you're talking about, being very tired and then going home, shower and all. And next day you're going to go to a new production, new location and all. And then you'll be looking through your scripts with half sleepy eyes. And next morning, wake up, you're going to catch up. When I'm tired, it's very difficult to perform well.
ฉันก็เกี่ยวกับกบกว่าดีแต่จริงของฉัน
ครอบครัวอะไร
กบกว่าจริงๆของฉันผลอะไรอะเลลุกของฉัน
มันก็สามารถให้เราคนนั้นเหมือนกัน
ที่จะบ้าเหรอ
From then, I started to be very conscious about needing to rest on set. Sometimes when the waiting period is long enough, I'll ask for somewhere I can lie down. If you see a chair, you sit down, right? Don't monkey around and waste your energy. I know young people on set, they monkey around a lot, which is good. They are having fun and all. So this, collectively, it is the biggest challenge to transform myself from a logical thinking person most of the time to one that is more nuanced and more subtle and more subjective in my delivery of my work. In daily life, we don't always speak clearly. You get away with stammering and mumbling and speaking below your breath and all that. But on film, particularly, you're supposed to be smooth with your delivery. It is quite strange. In daily life, if somebody stammer or pronounce wrongly, you kind of automatically filter them out. But in film, audiences are less forgiving. The need to speak clearly and smoothly, project my voice, and not project my voice at the right time has to be built into my daily habit. And hopefully now I'm getting better than when I started. There are also common aspects between my previous career and now. is that previously you talked about branding, sense of urgency, concern for detail, structure and discipline, and scenario planning. So some of the things are the same. So in other words, the maturity in life, what you have gone through in life, trials and tribulations, all helped and contributed towards your emotional library or reservoir or experience to tap on.
Burung baru. Burung mata putih.
Alah, kita punya kampung tu berapa banyak burung ada, Lim.
Itu dulu. Sekarang apa boleh buat? Kita boleh ada burung, tapi mesti di dalam sangka.
Lim, ni burung boleh nyanyi tak?
Pandai. Bini awak goreng ikan lagi ya? Baunya sedap, ah?
Alah, ikan asin saja, Lim. Dulu kita kampung lain, tangkap sendiri. Fresh punya. Ini ikan asin saja.
Now, you've worked in your career both in front of the camera as an actor and also behind the camera as a producer. What do you think is different between the two roles that people might not really intuitively understand if you haven't done that kind of work?
Behind the camera is real life, logistic,
Right.
timeliness, discipline, regimentation. In front of the camera, it is fantasy, living sincerely under imaginary circumstances. I direct and produce some of the productions and I act in front of the camera. It is rather tiring because you are flip-flopping from real-life logic fantasy, real-life logic fantasy. Your mind
Wow.
switching is very tiring. So that is the main difference. To give you examples, behind the camera, you're talking about finding a location, setting up the camera, costume, props. A simple example is that if the character is a married man and there is a close-up on his ring finger and there's no ring,
Right.
somebody forgotten the prop. It might be a small thing, but then you are losing credibility. And those that care, they'll start disconnecting
Right.
emotionally with the story. A little bit at first, then if you have another fumble, there'll be yet another disconnection, yet another, and eventually they find that this movie, I don't know, I don't feel it. That's the reason, because there's not enough concern for detail to disallow the audience to have any opportunity to get out of the film. You want them to be emotionally invested in the film.
I think you're making a very good point about that, because you're right. When you do watch a film, you are aware when things are, I'm looking for the right word, but when they don't fit with the scene, when there's something that's out of place. If it's historic and there's something in there that's modern day and somebody forgot to change, even if it's something very small, or if it's in a location and then something about the location is sort of a tell that it's actually not the real place. You're right. People do notice that in a strange way, but actually they do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it can be quite irritating to watch a movie together with somebody like me or a filmmaker, because we'll be really pedantic about little details that should happen or should not happen, and we'll start criticizing the acting, the performance, the script, the lighting, and everything else. Then you need a layman next to us to remind us, and look, just enjoy the movie. Sometimes we can go overboard with these things if we watch movies.
It's interesting because I think when we think, me and other people who are not in the industry themselves, we don't really see it as something that's so detailed. And I think listening to what you're saying, I can really realize, wow, this is a very intensely detailed kind of a business to be in. There's so many things, a lot of moving parts that you have to be aware of and get right all the time. I mean, after everything that you've done in entertainment, what's the biggest thing you've learned? What do you feel, this is what I've learned from being in this field?
I am as good as the last gig I've done. Casting directors are very unforgiving with poor performance. You may have gotten acting awards and all that, but really, you're as good as your last gig. I always work very hard and not leave things to chance. I also choose production. Sometimes it's not my fault. Sometimes the script is so bad, the director is so bad, the production set is so badly planned and all that. So you appear to be bad and you're edited wrongly and you just look bad. So it's quite scary that you're as good as your last gig. Yeah, so you can drop from the top down to nothing. For most jobs, you go in with one interview, and that job, if you choose to, and if they don't fire you before that, it can last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? One interview lasted you that long. For acting, even for half a day production shoot, they still audition you. So you're put in front of
Right.
a panel, being judged like a newbie.
Right.
Very rarely you are walking into a production without audition. I would say maybe 1 in 100 chance. After being an actor, you're no longer just a private individual. Okay, because by now I'm not in the sea of nameless faces anymore. So my public behavior is very important. Like back in the days before I became an actor, if somebody behaved badly in the trains and subways, I would walk there and tell them off. I don't care. I don't have any misgivings about telling somebody not to do some non-civic act in public. But now I dare not do that because especially these days you have mobile phones and cameras everywhere and they will video me and tell the world that, you see, this actor behaves like this as if he owns the world or something. So public behavior has changed. Personal branding is also very important. What I post on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, I have to be very careful. You have to maintain a certain persona such that you still remain as an interesting person to your audience.
It's complicated to manage all of that between all the gigs that you're doing, managing that personal branding, right? Keeping up with all the languages. You got a lot going on, Michael.
That's why some people have managers. I don't have a manager.
Right.
I manage myself.
So with 400 different productions under your belt, I mean, that's huge. What's next for Michael Chua? What do you have in the pipeline, or what would you love to do?
Currently, I'm shooting the season 1 of Soul Connection, comedy drama series, which is to bring back the art of meaningful conversation. Coming Saturday will be the last day of principal photography. So
Okay.
hopefully by early next year, maybe February, we can put the first episode out on YouTube. I've also written a novel called Made in Singapore, MAID, with the objective of making it into a movie. But COVID lasted longer than I thought, and it is quite difficult to bring in foreign artists into Singapore. So this cannot be done now because of COVID. And also the trend seems to be moving towards episodic storytelling and streaming. So I'm leaving that in the back burner for the moment. I've also written 5 or 6 scripts, and one of them is a social realistic Singapore army drama. It would require a lot of locations, uniforms, equipment, and army stuff, jeeps and set
Right.
design. It is not the best time to raise funds to make independent movies. 2 weeks ago, I wrote 3 treatments for some historical films in Singapore. And it has to do with politics, gangsters, and opium farmers. So I hope to get those done because it's really interesting. After researching what people did 100 years ago, 150 years ago, I think it's important to reenact those kind of stories in realistic detail, not only to the extent of costume and props, but in terms of languages and character, it has to be very realistic. So this is one that I hope to be able to do. There are 3 scripts that I've written treatments for. 2 of them may be more expensive to produce, but one of them, it could well work. Because today with computer graphics and so on, we can get quite a lot of things done inexpensively. With a laptop, you can generate
Right.
a lot of stuff which is not there in real life. In fact, I'm very enthusiastic about that one.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? The technology has been quite a game changer and a bit of a leveler, right?
Yes,
That
very
allows a
much so,
lot
yeah.
more people entry.
Yeah.
So one last question. What advice would you give people who are looking to pivot in their careers?
This is a very difficult question because I have my life and my background, and somebody else's life may be different. So I can only answer from really strictly my perspective, may or may not be applicable to other people. I now often ask myself, if I die tomorrow, will I regret doing this? I also ask this question to the time when I was a cybersecurity expert. Did I do things that was an utter waste of time? And if I died tomorrow, would I have regretted spending so much time doing those things? And the answer is yes. There are certain periods of time during my technology professional days I wasted too much time, spent too much time, way too much time. In film, now thinking over 11 years, there's not 1 minute that I've regretted. There are productions which are less than ideal, but still not a regret. There are productions where everybody is tired long hours. It's not a regret. People who are afraid to make this change in their life because they're comfortable in their present life will have to ask themselves honestly this question, whether if they die tomorrow, they'll regret not making the move or not making the move. That is very important. And then the reason for change, why are they making the change? Is it because they are fed up with the boss, they have a difficult boss? If you change industry, you get another difficult boss sometimes. So you got to challenge the reason for your change. The reason for your change must be something more esoteric than that, more profound, more life-changing. And lastly, you need to have passion. Because obviously, if I don't have passion, I would not be able to endure the long hours in acting and filmmaking. Sometimes silly things like crawling in the mud 3 a.m. in the morning in a forest in Malaysia or in a purportedly haunted house. So if your passion is not strong enough, you will quit. That is what I always say about young people, often the sweet young things that join the acting industry out of vanity and fun. It is fun, that's fine. Vanity cannot hold your endurance that long. It has to be passion. Passion will create incredible fuel in your body to endure all the hardships. So those that quit after 2 years, I would say their passion is not strong enough. So those who want to make the change, they can make the change, and if after 2 years they find that it is not their thing, they can quit. There's no shame to it. You can just change back to your old life, and then now at least you are more confident and certain of your directions.
係啊，食咗啊，食緊好多啦，食咗好多啦，睇佢幾好味。